Hi, I'm Scott Moore with Moore Engineering Services. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about what our company does and some new services that we've added. Moore Engineering provides and has for about 13 years forensic services to attorneys in litigation. We also provide walkway safety auditing services and niche construction testing services. We also have on staff a number of drone pilots now and also provide 3D scanning, printing, and prototyping services. I'm here today to specifically talk to you about a new addition, expert Dan Schroeder. And I'll let Dan talk a little bit about his qualifications as a retail expert.
Hi, I'm Dan Schroeder. I have over 2 decades of retail experience in different capacities in a retail store environment. I've decided to take that into the expert services under the wing of Mr. Moore here to broaden my horizons and take on a new career path.
So for a couple of years, Moore Engineering was looking for opportunities to hire other experts, but we were looking for a unique expertise. And we saw a need in the industry for retail experts, and that's where Dan came in. I met Dan, and he and I immediately hit it off just in getting along, but also in kind of our view towards professionalism, integrity, and kind of being on the same page. And I found Dan to be a great professional, fun to work with, easy to work with, and very reasonable when it comes to figuring things out, thinking outside the box, and coming up with things. Dan, what do you remember about that first interview we did? I think we did a couple of interviews.
I remember from as easy as this has been, it was surprisingly long and structured. We met, and I think that we got on the same page immediately. And I think part of the reason I'm here today is the relationship that we developed and that honesty in our interactions. So we talked initially, we set a meeting for several months later, we met clients together. And for somebody like me who's worked in retail my whole life, this was a new, a little bit scary challenge, something new and different. And I think that our relationship has made the transition very easy for me.
Cool. Yeah, I remember one of those interviews, I got a few of our clients, some of the most brutal ones, to ask you questions in almost a deposition format. I think that was pretty brutal, and you did great. So yeah, it was a good start. Moore Engineering has really only been me as an expert witness for many years, and bringing somebody else in was a kind of a unique thing. But what I have noticed is the specific attention to detail and ability to interact with and listen to clients. It's something I've always enjoyed doing in my design practice prior to this, working as a contractor and also in running Moore Engineering Services, and it's something that I saw in Dan right away. Dan, what do you think are the qualities that made you best suited for this when you started?
I think I saw how you develop relationships with people, and that's really what I've been doing my entire career. And I saw that the stability and the types of relationships that you develop with your clients, and I really saw that and wanted to emulate that, and knew that I can do that because it's based on what I've done this entire time.
It's been great to develop some of those relationships further and add you, and now we're looking at a couple other people, and even Mike, actually, who's been engaged now in a couple of cases for flooring failures. So yeah, the next few years will be developmental for everybody. We did a video before, kind of an intro video that talked about expertise. And one of the things that's always been important to me and our firm is to have background in what you're talking about and what you're working in, and also to be actively working in that thing. And I think that that's one of the things that I took away from our first meeting with Dan, and I think it's also one of the things that makes him uniquely qualified. Dan, what are some of that experience that you feel like that you've had in the past and that you have now working at Moore Engineering that uniquely qualifies you and continues to validate your profession as an expert?
Well, I think experience-wise, it's not necessarily about holding the position. It's about, to me, how I was in that position. So it's about being a part of that position, being a part of that team, and seeing all angles of that. So I've been a part of stores that are incredibly successful and stores that I was a part of rebuilding that team. So I think knowing all of those pieces of it and knowing how everything works, as opposed to have just been a store manager and oversaw it, I was in there with my people, I was in the trenches with my staff, and I learned the same things that they did. And I think that allows me to understand retail at a different level than a lot of typical managers out there. As far as more engineering goes, I've learned a lot of different things when it comes to testing and standards that are also, they kind of dovetail with the things that are involved in the retail process. So all these additional benefits that are just going to allow me to better help clients down the road.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's been good so far to be able to have you as an asset, not just doing retail work, but also cross-training in the other areas that we specialize in. Dan is definitely a team player that is willing to get into the trenches, which I think is one of the most important characteristics of a good leader, is somebody that even at a high level will get in and turn a bolt or ask somebody, hey, I'm here to help you finish this project up and tell me what you need me to do. I think that's one of the things that I've also noticed about Dan.
And I think that also, I got to give you a little bit of credit, Scott, because you identified the fact that I'm a busybody. I'm used to running around like crazy, and sitting in an office or just doing reports probably would have driven me a little crazy. So allowing me to learn those different things and kind of be out in the field and learn different testing procedures was really, really helpful for me to kind of keep me learning in different directions and still stay focused.
Yeah, we definitely keep it interesting. Nobody gets to sit at a desk all day here. Getting in the field eventually will happen. When I started this business, the goal wasn't forensic engineering. And when I started out doing forensic engineering, it was a cold call that came in. Hey, can you do this work? And, of course, the answer is yes when somebody calls and asks, can you do this? But I liked it right away. And I think the challenges I had then was that while I had some colleagues in the industry, I was pretty much doing it on my own and learning a lot of that stuff initially. And I think that's one of the areas that Dan has had an advantage in being able to look at what I've done and see the mistakes that I made and the things I did well and then emulate those things. Dan, what do you think the biggest advantage that you've had in that regard has been so far?
I think you just said it. So in our early conversations, I think you quoted it as saying, I'm not going to let you make the same mistakes that I did. And I respect the fact that you didn't have somebody to go to and ask those questions. So I know I ask a lot of questions. And to be able to be able to lean on somebody and pick their brain who's been through it and is an expert, and there's no pun intended, is very helpful to me in those times where you might make a mistake and learn from it and grow. But you're really eliminating that in a lot of ways for me, where I can just learn it from you and move on.
Right. Yeah, and I found that that's really helped to provide that value right when you got into doing this. Being able to see how do you take your expertise and your experience and apply it to these engagements. The interesting part about our business, one of the interesting things is that while there are separate expertise levels and different expertise areas, they all kind of do work together. And I think early on in the process with Dan, we identified kind of a principle on how we approach cases differently and how we could, in an engagement, work together and the different ways that we work. And actually, I'm going to leave it to Dan to describe it. I think he knows what I'm talking about, so we'll see. Dan?
Well, I think that you said it without saying it, is we come from two different point of views on the same topic a lot of times. So in a report where we might be working together with a client, Scott's going to look from the engineering perspective of it, how things work, and I'm going to look at it from the inside the store, how it's supposed to function, leadership-wise and employee-wise. And really, those two wind up being a cohesive report that say the same thing, but with two different subject links. And I think it's worked really well so far with us.
Yeah, we've had a number of engagements where it was helpful to the client to be able to see that applications of science and engineering coming from the outside and then dovetailing that with what does that look like to the management on the inside. And that's really, it can be very valuable. It's also a great way to think about which one of us you would hire if you're only going to hire one. Is this more of a scientific issue? Is this more of an engineering issue, or is this more of a managerial issue? And I think now more engineering is able to not just answer that question, but see both sides of that coin either individually or collectively together.
I think ultimately, too, we give the option to the client on how they want to proceed with several options a lot of times.
That's correct, yeah. And in the next few years, hopefully a few months, we will be adding a couple of other experts. And my goal is to have them also be this dovetailing complementary experts and not just another engineer. Specific expertise coming in to augment what we do and make us better and serve our clients better. Industry standards for an engineer are paramount. Currently, we're working on a blog post, and it may be posted soon, that talks about this kind of triangle of authority. And in engineering, it's very objective because you have codes that are mandatory, and then you have industry standards that talk about how we do things. And a lot of times that's how do we design a bridge so that it doesn't fail and kill people. It's very objective, and it's very necessary. And what's been interesting is seeing the difference between that objectivity and the more varied but still consensus aspects of retail where there aren't as many standards as there would be in construction, but there are still standard practices that are often codified. And Dan, you can speak a little bit more to that relative to the standards that you're citing and the arguments you're making around them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of quality standards that I think the world of today is dovetail. They really dovetail. They work with what happens in a retail environment. And retail has a lot of different shapes and forms. At the end of the day, you're talking about a floor hazard, a slip hazard. There can be standards that are referenced for those things. Where I'm excited about, where I would like to take it to the next level, is to really help develop in those standards specific to retail and certain subjects. So we're putting together some various subjects as things go along, and we identify some things, pallet safety on sales floor. You're talking about shelving and the riser shelvings that are used to display products. What kind of product is supposed to be on that. Things that are very clear cut. And this isn't about just making rules or just making a new standard. It's about having a very clear path that all retailers can use to keep the safety of their associates and the public in mind.
Yeah, and hopefully in the next few months, Dan is going to be we're brainstorming now to try and figure out ways to create ASTM or ANSI standards and work with either existing committees or create a new committee to address this specifically. So it's exciting. Years of doing engineering and even more years of doing more engineering. I think that the thing that is most exciting is when we get to do new things that nobody else is doing. And we have a couple of projects right now that are ongoing that have stemmed from our experience in doing things like 3D printing, 3D scanning, developing processes for that, some prototyping work, and then also realizing and having kind of an in-depth, experiential expertise in litigation. I've been asked a couple of times if I'm an attorney. I am not, and I don't want to read that much, so I probably won't ever be an attorney. But having such exposure to that world for so long has really kind of enlightened us to say, okay, well, how do we take things like technology and new practices and standards to help the legal industry or to augment the legal industry? I mean, one of our goals in starting this company was the avoidance of slips, trips, and falls, helping people to avoid them and keeping people from getting hurt, which is ultimately what civil engineers do.
Right now, for me, it's all about growing my expertise in what I do right now. I think the coolest thing that is going on right now is that I have the ability to not only grow within my own new career path, but I have the ability to grow with more engineering. The exciting things that are going on, whether it's testing or the 3D printing or drone services, those are all things that I also am learning at the same time. And for me, I haven't lost that passion to help stores better procedures, processes, and be safer and be more productive. So really consulting for me and helping businesses to build more profit, more safety, a better place to work is really what I'm excited about. So I think there's a lot of different ways that I'm going to be able to grow within this path and still maintain growing within my own expert field.
So Dan, I think the piece of advice I would give you is that as in any profession, we try not to mess up, but it's going to happen. I think it's an important part of the culture of our company that everybody makes mistakes, and the mistake is not what's important, it's how you handle it and get past it that people will remember. So my advice is that, we own our mistakes. It's actually part of the mission of our company, in our soul, part of our soul. It's one of the sayings or acronyms that we've put together, the swagger, ownership, unity, and leadership. And that ownership is really important in developing a sustainable professional career, especially in litigation.
I think my piece of advice to you would be to try to replicate the way that you brought me on board with all of these other exciting things that you're bringing on board. I think the relationship that we established and the support you've given have helped me make this experience a really wonderful one and a life-changing one. So to try to replicate that. And don't stop believing.
Don't stop believing. All right. Well, this has been fun. It's been an interesting time talking a little bit with Dan and giving you guys a glimpse of what More Engineering does. Again, if you have any questions or suggestions on videos you'd like us to do, feel free to reach out through our website. If you have any questions for Dan, certainly just give us a call, or you can email Dan directly. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. And Dan, do you have anything else to say?
No, it's been a pleasure. And if you want more information, contact More.
There we go. Test more, slip less. Okay, so Dan, what piece of advice do I have for you? Get a better suit?
That's a great piece of advice.